Hi, everyone. I'm Sid Sijbrandij, co-founder, CEO at GitLab, and I'm here with Doron of Diem. Doron, you want to introduce yourself and the company briefly, because we're going to talk remote work and remote culture today.
Yes. So hi, my name is Doron Segal. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Diem. We help brick and mortar businesses build subscription business in under 2 minutes. It could be a coffee place, restaurant, CSAs. Just start building subscription.
Awesome. Yeah, take it away, I would say.
Yeah. So I actually have a couple of questions I would like to ask you. And I'm a big believer of trade-off. I don't think there is one solution that solves everything. And I did like your point about talking how you basically mentioned like you need to go fully remote, but don't do part-time. Like don't do half of the office goes remote and the other not.
You muted yourself. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, no, I just had the call coming in. Let me just do the.
Yeah, and to fill the time, yeah, I think hybrid is going to be very hard. I think if everyone is working remote, you fit all your work processes to do that. That works well. Every company, many companies have done it in the last year. If you're all co-located, you fit that. That works. Doing two things probably is a lot harder. So
basically, what's the secret that helped GitLab go fully remote?
I think, first of all, there is no secret, because we thought it was really hard because people kept telling us, oh, you're doing that? That must be so hard. So we spend a ton of time and build a lot of great practices that we're going to talk about. But it turns out that every company can do it. The pandemic forced companies to do it, and most companies were more effective after going remote than before. So I think it's totally possible. I think there's a couple of things that you can do better when you're remote, and remote offers some opportunities. It offers an opportunity to kind of create greater visibility in the company. If you're sharing something remote, it's easy to duplicate it, whether that's something written or something recorded. I think it's an opportunity to work more asynchronously, where you document more, so people have to ask fewer questions and there's fewer interruptions in the company. And I think with the time people save, because they don't have to commute, and they don't have an office and they don't have that, I think some of that time should be used to kind of foster informal communication. An office is a very inefficient way to foster informal communication, because during the commute, you're not talking to anybody. But those water cooler moments are important, and I think there's ways to foster them in a remote environment. But I think it has to be organized and endorsed by the company, and has to come from the top down.
And I think you touched something very interesting. One of my job before working remote was being in a meeting and kind of act as a mediator. And I think when you work remote and you convert to an async communication, you do give more room to the more quieter people in the room to express their opinion, because they can just ask a comment or a question. And in a way, there's the risk is also the way people like read your message. Because sometimes I can read your message, oh, that makes sense. That's just ask a question. The other way is like, I'm basically calling you stupid. It's like that doesn't make sense. So two people can read it very differently. But and I think we're gonna touch it later, because I asked about the culture different between hiring from different places. There's the political view, which like how do you reduce it when you work remote, and so yeah, I guess maybe I can continue about like going remote. What's the hiring process look like? Interview, coding challenge, providing computer. That's kind of like once you hire the person, what do you do with like places like that they don't have like a good internet connection?
Yeah, we have regular interview processes. Most of it is video calling, regular interviews, and then coding challenges. So I think it's pretty similar to a co-located interview process. We provide a computer, or we pay for a computer, for internet, for the rest of your setup, like the movable desk, headphones, everything you might need in the course of work. We don't pay for a room at home, but if you work outside your home, we pay for that. Basically anything we can pay for as an employer without it being considered compensation.
Okay, that makes sense. I can move to the next question, which regarding the handbook. I really like it. Do you have any concern about basically publishing OKR, KPI, North Star, just so your competitor, now it's no secret. I know exactly what GitLab are trying to do. So like, how do you have this like edge that companies had, let's say 50 years ago? Like, I don't know what they're going to come up with.
Yeah, I think the biggest edge is the execution on the plan. And most companies I've worked in, their problem was not that their competitors knew what they were doing. Their problem was that the people inside the company didn't even know what the strategy was. So I would err on being a bit more transparent. And in the end, if it's a good strategy, your competitor might know, but it's not like they don't have things to do already today. So I don't think it's a big disadvantage. Good strategies are pretty obvious, like it's the right thing to do. And we've seen small things where like competitors try to preempt us because they knew something was coming out from GitLab. But in the end, if you just ship more every month, that you're going to win.
Okay. And how do you measure that? Just basically using your KPI and key metric. Just like a lot of the time, I feel like the acceptance criteria are not as clear sometimes to measure them. So yes, like, do you count commits? Do you count lines of code? It's like those things for me seems a little bit ridiculous. Than like, okay, I shipped something, user are using. Like, how do I even track the productivity of those users?
Yeah. So in engineering, we measure merge requests divided by the engineering group size. So kind of per engineer, although we measure on a group level, not on an individual level, because we want them to work as a group.
Smart.
And then merge requests are things that like have to ship something of value, and it has to ship it all the way to production. And the first response you get from engineers is like, well, I know just how to game that. I'll make all my stuff smaller. I'll ship a smaller thing. Like, that's exactly what we want you to do, because we know if you ship something smaller, it's easier to review, less risky to deploy. It's easier to adjust course. So it makes us more efficient. And I think right now we're between 8 or 9 MRs based on kind of headcount. And you can find those numbers on our GitLab engineering performance indicators.
Okay. And how do you measure that those changes were good or not?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
We measure all of them. It's the rate of change that matters.
Got it. So there's no like revenue correlate with like the work people are doing.
No, if you can correlate revenue directly with engineering time, please start a startup around that. But I think that's
I know. The only thing I could think of is basically infrastructure changes. That when you make a change, you can say, oh, this change will cost us X amount by resources.
Yeah, and look, you have product managers who think about that. You have an infrastructure leader who thinks about that. We have an analyst in infrastructure who kind of determines like what the best bang for the buck cost savings are. So I think in the end, you need people to do that. What we also do is we allocate kind of engineering time between different parts of the product. If you wonder about that, you can Google GitLab product investment.
Okay, and the next question was so I want to ask it, what are the biggest non-obvious challenges working fully remote? Because of course, it's the time zone, I guess culture. Is there any non-obvious challenges working?
I think we touched on that. Look, you got to organize the informal communication, and that sounds maybe logical, but it's very, I don't know, it's a bit cringy to organize that. Hey, everyone, we're now going to have a non-work related subject call, but I think if you do it and you do it consistently, that weirdness goes away. And I think the hardest thing has been working handbook first, where if you change the process, you change it in the handbook, and you don't treat the handbook as some after the fact thing you have to change, but you use it as the way to communicate your change. That is so intuitive to people that it takes constant reinforcement.
Okay. And on top of that, basically, like the next question was, are there any cultural differences that are hard to deal with? Like communication, work ethic, hours, understanding the product, understanding the domain. Like, I guess you're working with developer, so there's kind of like a unique culture, which is like engineering in general. Like, it's easier. But is there any like cultural difference that are or gaps that are hard to fill between like different countries and different languages and how people read, you know?
Yeah, we have a ton of engineers at GitLab, but we also have a ton of non-engineers at GitLab. So I definitely say it's functionally, it's a mix. And I think a lot of people from Europe are not aware how sensitive politics at work are in North America. So that's a cultural difference. A lot of people from North America assume that people can read between the lines, so they're very subtle in giving feedback and clues. And then the rest of the world doesn't pick up on those. So they have to kind of be more explicit in what they mean. And the rest of the world has to read a bit more carefully.
I totally can relate to that. I moved to the Bay Area 2012, and for a year I felt like Borat in a way of like missing the, you know, like, oh, that's what they meant. Oh, I see. Like, so yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of more straightforward. Do you actually touch it when you talk about, when you do like training, onboarding people, like, here's the way we recommend communicating? Like,
yeah, I think we touched on that.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I think you already touched on that. So there is no difference between the executive team and other department. Everyone kind of work remote.
Yeah, I think the executive team does do offsites, and we now do them remote because of COVID, but we did get together. I think we're a functional company, so everyone is kind of working with the same function, except the executive team. They are working like cross-functionally. So there's a lot of collaboration and trust building, etc., that's needed there.
I see. So there's basically more often meeting between those cross-functional.
Yep.
Exact team. Okay. Yeah. And has there been any moments that you wished you had all the team in just one location, one time zone?
So locations don't matter anymore. It's great to do remote. Same time zone, like it would be not good for our customers because our customers are in different time zones. Our support needs to be in different time zones. And this way people don't have to kind of adjust their sleep rhythm. But working across time zones is very hard. And it's not, going remote is very easy compared to working cross time zones. Working asynchronous is extremely hard. And it's never perfect. And then, yeah, sometimes it's really fun to be in one location. So once a year, we all meet up and we hang out together.
Okay. And that's good. That's kind of remind me the WordPress kind of model of like meeting somewhere around the world, even just between the teams. Do you do just an offsite the entire company, or are you also recommending on breaking each teams and says, we'll do like one offsite for the entire company, but then let's do a second offsite per team just to build a better bond and communication?
One offsite for the entire company.
Okay. And basically, I think you kind of touched it. How do you make sure different teams are in sync? And I think that's the handbooks, Slack, probably more documentation.
Yeah, also we do something called key meetings and group conversations. And they're kind of a department has a presentation, sometimes with a video of all their key metrics, of all their OKRs. And then people can ask questions. In the key meeting, it's a select group of 15 people. And in the group conversations, anyone at the company.
So when you building team, do you build team based on time zone or talent specific? Just like, okay, this is a talented person, will be in this team.
Yeah, depends. Like if it's sales or support, there might be time zone requirements. Like sales is even location requirements. Support has time zone requirements. And then if we're in engineering, we try to form a group in the same time zone just because we know collaboration will be easier for that group. But in general, we have people in more than 60 countries in many, many time zones. So
Okay.
At a company level, we're agnostic.
So that makes sense though. So you do take into account the time zone when you build a team or build a product.
Yeah, well, it's some roles more than others. I think in engineering, we don't take it into account much during hiring, but then we assign people to teams. We try to have the team in not the same, but like close time zones.
Yeah.
And then for sales, like it's really beneficial if you live in the territory. Otherwise, you'll be doing a lot of flying.
Right. And so how does GitLab come up with OKRs? Like, what's the process that you come up with? And then I assume you're publishing to the handbook and maybe just email everyone. It's like, hey, I just update the handbook. Or so I guess it's two questions. How do you come up with, and like what's drive the next objectives?
Yeah. Together. So we're just in that process. My chief of staff had some ideas. I have a lot of ideas. I run it by the E group. They provide input. And then we have in this case, remote offsite where we narrow it down and start inviting more people to work on them.
And how easy it is for a junior engineer to give you an idea? Like right now, how from like basically down top approach?
Yeah, I don't know. I have an open door policy in Slack where there's a CEO channel. So if you have a good idea, I would post it there. I'm not sure. Maybe Anthony and Darwin can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of specific channels. So one for CEO, teams. So I work in sales. So we have a sales one, global, then specific teams. So I think if you have an idea, everyone's free to post in the channel required across different functions.
There's also very clear DRIs published in the handbook, so you know who's responsible for a very detailed level of organizational things, and so you can reach out to them. Everyone's open to casual coffee chats, whether it's about just getting to know each other or digging into the commonalities you have with someone in their area of their responsibility.
I see. So in a way, someone suggested a new idea, and like people will comment, or just the CEO will go and says, I like this one. Maybe we should prioritize that.
Well, you'll be very quickly pushed to collaborate online in issues so that it can be asynchronous and everyone can view what's going on and everyone can continue to contribute. So, if you float something casually, pretty quickly it's put out to an issue or an MR to start discussing and collaborating there.
My only concern with complete async communication is I feel like I will move slower. I might move better and smarter because I have more time to think about it. But being with people in the room, we just think about it, and a day later we can push it and it will be in production. I feel like if it's the async, we might figure out, oh, we don't even need it because we can just get this like other service and it makes people more think like we actually don't need it. So I could definitely see the trade-off, but the concern is like we'll move slower because I need to wait till Australia to wake up.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think in a sync call, there's less lag between the different responses, so it's faster. I think if you look at like an organizational level, most of the time, the speed of decision making is mostly affected by reaching consensus. So I think saying, hey, for every decision, this is the person who will make that decision, and then sticking to that and not having to get consensus, that saves an enormous amount of time. And I think that's the bigger factor in most companies and most significant decisions.
I see, that makes sense. So when you work in async, just reduce consensus and have this person that can just make the decision on okay.
Yeah, when we make decisions, we allow everyone to provide input. So we get the best of consensus organization. And then we have one person making the decision, allowing the speed of a hierarchical organization.
I see. Okay. And my last question was, what are the biggest challenges and risks for GitLab today? And how is it being changed since the last 2-3 years? Like how they're different? Or maybe even more to the early day in YC, I guess.
Yeah. So I think on the marketing side, we still, I think there's a lack of awareness of GitLab compared to what it can do for people and how many people are using it. And I think it shows up by like how many new customers we get, especially the large ones. Now, when they experience the product, they like it a lot, so they grow really fast. And then on the product side, I think it's a struggle to kind of have an enormous amount of functionality, like 10 stages, tons of open source contributions, and I still have like a great user experience that's quick and consistent and that looks pleasant. I think those are two big challenges. And how is that different? I think for a long time, it was a question whether people wanted a DevOps platform instead of just source control or source control plus CI. But I think over the last few years, it's become clear that DevOps platforms are going to win in this market, and we're the leading one. So I think our category is winning. So that's been great.
I would say that one thing that when I first kind of saw GitLab, when you guys just was getting started, the social aspect was lacking that GitHub have. People always ask, show me your GitHub. Like that's for me just to, assess how good an engineer is. Just like I would ask for their LinkedIn and GitHub. And I haven't looked at GitLab. I need to check it again. But and I think that was a good way for me to assess like how good they are, like how active they are with the green, lights. And
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is your resume. You don't put your resume on Salesforce. But Salesforce makes a lot more money than LinkedIn.
Okay, so that's okay. So you do see that GitLab is more like, here's my tool to work with my Salesforce, and okay, I see. And you're right. I definitely think that GitHub is today acting more of as a LinkedIn than the tool for CI/CD. And do you think you guys gonna go also into the cloud infrastructure world, since you already have the source control CI/CD, like kind of like the Heroku word of like I can spin up?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that people just want to use the 3 hyper clouds. So I think you want a Heroku-like experience, but then deploy to the 3 Western hyper clouds. And we have made the 5-minute production app to cater to that.
Cool. Okay. Yes. Sid, thank you so much. This was great. I think I at least learned a lot, especially I think you solved the async problem, which is like to move faster, just you need someone who can make decision in this, just to break those like async communications.
Yeah, and make sure that everyone is okay, understands that model, and no one's upset if they gave a suggestion, but someone didn't follow it. Cool. Thank you so much.